why running fasted is the easiest way to slow your runs down. And that's not a good thing. When I say slow your runs down, I mean it's going to make you run slower. I probably should have phrased that differently. So not only when you run fasted are you going to hurt that actual run, but you're going to hurt your future runs. When you train fasted, you're not putting yourself in a state, and this is strength training or running. You're not putting yourself in a state to optimize for recovery afterwards. So when you go into a training session fasted, you burn through your glycogen stores faster. Now, you're probably not going to run out of actual glycogen stores unless you're doing like a 90-minute run fasted. Then yes, you'll literally run out of glycogen stores. But if we're talking about a 30-minute run or an hour lifting session, you're not going to run out of glycogen stores. Rather, you're going to finish that training session and you're already going to be in a depleted state. So now, even if you get in your post-workout recovery like you should, like I've talked about in the past, right after your training, you start getting some carbohydrates in, you were in a worse state to begin with than you would have been if you went into that training session fasted, not fasted rather. So that's the first way you're going to hurt yourself, is you're literally not going to recover as well. The second way you're going to hurt yourself is you're not going to have as good as a training session. I don't care if you think you can still perform optimally without having carbs or anything before your training. If you fuel your training and if you don't fuel your training, you will perform better fueled. Now, if you're someone who says, well, I can't stomach anything, that's a whole nother story. Yes, maybe you need to wake up a little bit sooner to get in those carbs so that then you don't have stomach problems. Because if you're having stomach problems, it's going to kind of reverse that whole thing. So the only way that you're not going to perform better having eaten something before training is if you're causing stomach problems, if it's not going to settle well. So that's why you have to do if you can't get up sooner. So let's say you can't get up 45 to an hour before your training session. That's when you reach for something like maple syrup, something like honey, something like bananas, dates, something quick, and play with all four of those. Those are my 4 go-tos. Maple syrup, just literally straight up maple syrup. Honey, bananas, dates. Personally, I don't do well on a banana. I do decent on dates, I do pretty decent on honey, and I do phenomenal on maple syrup. I will just do straight up maple syrup if I haven't given myself enough time before my training. Personally, before a strength training session, if I haven't eaten in a while, literally I'll reach for a Pop-Tart, I don't care. You need to get the calories in. The nutrients don't matter as much as the calories do. So that's perfectly fine to reach for something like just toast or like I do a Pop-Tart. Now, number 1 was that you are going to have worse recovery. Number 2 is that you're literally going to have worse training. And then number 3, and then I'll jump in the only time it's beneficial, which it really isn't. Number 3, you're going to set yourself up to be hungry later. Again, this goes back to people who say that they do fine with it, yada, yada, yada. Yes, you might do fine with it, but you would do better to not do it. So you might feel fine, but you would feel better. That's what it's about. It's not about feeling fine. It's about feeling better. You're going to put yourself in a position where you're going to be hungrier later. You're going to be more likely to binge or to overeat. Maybe not binge, that's an exaggeration, but to overeat later by not fueling your training. Same thing can be said with intermittent fasting. It's kind of the same premise. If you don't fuel your training, you're almost intermittent fasting in a sense, because if you didn't eat for 2 hours before bed, then you woke up, then you trained fasted, now it's been 2-3 hours, you haven't eaten, you're almost getting yourself into intermittent fasting territory. And if you're not careful, it makes it so much easier to overeat later in the day when you have depleted yourself too much beforehand. Now, the only time that there is a benefit to fasted running, and this is fasted running specifically, not other forms of fasting. I guess fasted cardio, I should say. It does not significantly improve fat loss. The only thing it'll do is it will slightly help you to utilize fat more. So if, for instance, you're a marathon runner or a triathlete and you don't fuel properly during your training session or during your event. Now, I'm saying this is accidentally, because you should be fueling appropriately. But let's say you do get a little too depleted at mile 18, 19, 20. If you've done a little bit of fasted training, you will utilize fat a little bit better as fuel, and therefore you won't potentially bonk as hard if you mess up your fueling. Now, if you're watching this, if you're listening to this, you shouldn't be messing up your fueling, so that shouldn't matter. You should be staying fueled throughout your run. I'll make future videos, talks on that so that you aren't gonna hit that bonking point. So that's really the only point of benefit, is it will help you to utilize fat better as fuel if you mess up your carb load or your carb intake during training. But you shouldn't be messing up your carb load, and you shouldn't be messing up your carbs during training, during races, during events. So therefore, there is no benefit to running fasted, and you should, unless you literally don't have time, you don't want to have the maple syrup or the honey going out the door, and it's a straight up convenience factor for you, there should never be a time where you train fasted. And quite frankly, there should never be a time where you've went over like 3 hours without eating and then went into a training session. So drop a comment below, anything else you want to hear about. Like, comment, subscribe. I would love feedback on what you want to hear about so I can keep bringing you these videos.